Did you know that over 4 million tons of cashews are harvested every year? 4 million tons. But here's the thing. Most of us have no idea how they get from tree to table. We pop them into our mouths, savor their buttery crunch, and move on, never thinking about the hands that picked them, the journey they took, or the incredible transformation they underwent just to become something we enjoy without a second thought. Cashews are a mystery like that. Hidden, unassuming. They don't demand attention like other nuts, and they certainly don't reveal their secrets easily. They grow in a way that seems almost upside down, clinging to the bottom of a swollen fruit, hanging precariously as if nature itself wasn't sure what to do with them. And yet, this little nut has traveled through history, shaped economies, sustained families, and connected people across continents. But to understand the journey of the cashew, we have to start at the very beginning. Imagine standing in a vast orchard, where cashew trees stretch their twisted branches under the heat of the sun. The air is thick with the scent of earth and ripening fruit, and the ground is speckled with fallen cashew apples, their skins flushed in hues of gold and red. These trees thrive in warm, dry climates, places like India, Vietnam, and parts of Africa where the soil is sandy and the seasons are predictable. Cashew trees don't need much. They're resilient, surviving in conditions that would challenge more delicate crops. But they do need time and patience. It takes 3 years, sometimes even longer, before a cashew tree is ready to bear fruit. And when it finally does, it doesn't just produce a nut. It produces a paradox. The cashew apple is the first thing you notice, plump, juicy, and deceptively sweet. In some parts of the world, it's eaten fresh, turned into juice, or even fermented into alcohol. But for most people, the apple is forgotten, discarded, left to rot beneath the trees. Because the true prize, the real reason these trees are cultivated, is the small, kidney-shaped nut that dangles beneath the fruit, almost like an afterthought. But here's where things get complicated. Unlike almonds or walnuts, you can't just crack open a cashew and eat it raw. In its natural state, the cashew is toxic. Its shell contains a corrosive oil, so potent that it can burn the skin, cause blisters, even damage the lungs if inhaled in high enough concentrations. This means every cashew you've ever eaten has gone through an intricate, labor-intensive process just to make it safe. And that process begins the moment the nut is separated from the apple. Harvesting cashews isn't done with heavy machinery. It's done by hand, by farmers who have spent generations learning the rhythm of the land. Each fruit is picked carefully, ensuring the nut inside isn't damaged. Once collected, the nuts are left to dry in the sun for several days. The heat helps weaken the toxic shell, preparing it for the next stage, a process that requires both precision and skill. Roasting. Fire is the only way to neutralize the toxic oils within the shell. The nuts are placed in large drums, roasted over an open flame, and watched closely as the heat works its magic. There's no room for error here. Too little heat and the toxins remain. Too much, and the cashews burn, losing their delicate flavor. And then comes the hardest part, shelling. Even after roasting, the shells are tough, stubborn, reluctant to give up the nut inside. In many parts of the world, this step is still done by hand, using small knives, simple tools, and an incredible amount of patience. Each nut is carefully split open, the edible kernel extracted, sorted, and prepared for the next phase of its journey. It's here that the cashew finally begins to resemble the snack we know. But there's still one final step. The nuts must be peeled, every trace of the inner skin removed, before they're sorted by size, quality, and color. Only the finest, most perfect cashews make it to the shelves. The rest? They're broken down, ground into butter, or used in various food products, ensuring that nothing goes to waste. By the time a cashew reaches your hands, it has traveled thousands of miles, passed through the care of farmers, workers, and processors, each one playing a role in transforming something hidden, something toxic, into something nourishing. It makes you wonder, doesn't it? How many things in life follow the same pattern? How often do we dismiss something because it seems too difficult, too messy, too complicated, never realizing that with time, care, and a little fire, it could become something extraordinary. The cashew's journey is one of patience, of transformation, of unseen effort that results in something enjoyed by millions. And maybe, just maybe, there's a lesson in that for all of us. But the journey doesn't end there. Even after the cashews have been harvested, roasted, and peeled, their path is far from over. They are sorted, each one examined for size, color, and quality. The finest, most pristine cashews, the ones with the perfect curve, the flawless surface, are set aside, destined for the most premium packaging. These will be sold whole, their perfection preserved, showcased in glossy bags or elegant tins. The rest? They take a different path. Some are broken during processing, their once perfect forms shattered into halves, quarters, even smaller fragments. But they are no less valuable. These cashews, the ones that didn't make it to the premium shelves, will be used in kitchens, blended into creamy cashew butter, ground into flour, turned into plant-based cheese, or incorporated into rich, flavorful sauces. Nothing is wasted. Nothing is discarded. Even the smallest pieces find purpose. And isn't that a beautiful thought? That even when something doesn't look perfect, it still holds value? That just because a cashew didn't make it into a gourmet package doesn't mean it won't bring nourishment, comfort, or joy in some other form. Cashews have a way of teaching us things without saying a word. They remind us that transformation is never instant. That before something can be truly enjoyed, it must first endure seasons of waiting, moments of pressure, the scorching heat of fire. That even after all of that, it must still be handled with patience, with care, with intention. And perhaps most importantly, they remind us that just because something appears tough, or difficult, or even untouchable, it doesn't mean it isn't full of potential. Think about it. This nut, this tiny thing that we so casually eat by the handful, was once locked inside a shell so toxic it had to be burned away. Yet inside, there was something worth saving. And isn't that true for people too? How often do we judge something, or someone, based on what we see on the outside? How often do we assume that because something is difficult to handle, it isn't worth the effort? But just like the cashew, every one of us carries something valuable within. And sometimes it takes a little fire, a little patience, a little care to bring that out. As the cashews leave the processing plants, they are packed and shipped across the world, crossing oceans, traveling continents, finding their way into homes, restaurants, markets. They are shared in celebrations, used in dishes passed down through generations, enjoyed in quiet moments with a cup of tea or a glass of wine. They have traveled so far, endured so much, and yet their purpose remains the same: to be savored, to be shared, to be something that brings warmth and comfort, even if only for a moment. So the next time you reach for a handful of cashews, pause for just a second. Think about where they came from. Think about the journey they've taken. And think about your own. Because like the cashew, you too are in the middle of a process. A journey that is shaping you, refining you, preparing you for something greater. And just like the cashew, you will emerge, changed, transformed, ready to be shared with the world. But what happens next? The cashew, now free from its toxic shell, has traveled through the hands of farmers, processors, and traders. It has been roasted, peeled, sorted, and packed. Now, it embarks on its final journey, a journey that will take it from quiet orchards to bustling markets, from remote villages to the kitchens of chefs and home cooks around the world. It is here in this final phase that the cashew transforms once again. In some places, it is lightly salted and roasted again, intensifying its flavor, making it the perfect snack, simple, unassuming, yet rich with history and effort. In others, it is coated in chocolate, caramelized in honey, or spiced with chili and herbs, giving it a new identity, a new purpose. It becomes a staple in traditional dishes, blended into curries in India, tossed into stir-fries in Thailand, ground into rich paste for West African stews. And yet, no matter where it ends up, no matter what form it takes, the essence of the cashew remains unchanged. It carries within it the same story, the story of resilience, of patience, of transformation. It's easy to overlook these things in the modern world. We live in an age of convenience, where food arrives in neat packages, where we rarely stop to consider the work behind what we consume. But there is something deeply grounding about pausing, even for just a moment, to acknowledge the unseen hands that made something possible. Think about it. The farmer who planted the tree decades ago, tending to it through seasons of drought and rain, never knowing whose hands would one day hold the fruit. The worker who carefully peeled each nut, ensuring it was safe to eat, never meeting the person who would one day enjoy it. The trader who carried it across continents, through markets and warehouses, before it arrived at its final destination. Every cashew holds a journey within it, a journey of time, effort, and unseen connections. And so do we. There's a lesson buried deep in this process, hidden beneath layers of fire and transformation. It's the reminder that growth is slow, that change is uncomfortable, that what we are becoming is shaped by what we are willing to endure, that even the hardest shells can be cracked, that what once seemed untouchable can become something nourishing, that just because something starts in the dirt, it doesn't mean it won't find its way into the world in a way that matters. So as you sit there, as you reach for another cashew, as you let its warmth and flavor settle on your tongue, take a moment. Think about the soil that nurtured it. Think about the fire that transformed it. Think about the hands that carried it. And then think about yourself. Because like the cashew, you are in a process. You are growing, shifting, breaking open in ways you may not even see yet. And just like the cashew, when the time is right, you will arrive exactly where you are meant to be.